I'm here in the workshop on a Sunday, which is almost unheard of. I don't usually work Sundays. However, I've negotiated this with my wife because we've been working towards getting a prototype board gaming table already, and the pressure's on because we hope to show it at a board gaming show which is at the NEC in just under 2 weeks. So I've said, right, let's get the thing made and be absolutely sure that it's something we can show, and then we'll book the place. So with a bit of luck we will be there. I'll be talking a lot more about that table once it's assembled and I've got more to show you. This video will mainly be about some wood finishes that I'm using, but just a little sneak preview. The concept of the table is it's a dining table which looks like a normal dining table when in use in that way. Just ignore that cup holder because that wouldn't usually be there as a dining table. But then those three tops come off to make a gaming table. So we've got parts lying around. That's the main frame with the recess, the legs, which I'm just getting ready to put some finish on, and these are going to be sanded up as cup holders, and the countertops are here, which have some finish on. So to get onto the wood finishing, now I've mentioned before that I really rate Movac products, and we settled on Movac for the spray painted paint finish that we use. They picked up on that and said could they send us some free samples to share what we think about them. And as I said to you before, I would only be honest about what I think, so there's no payment here. It's just they give me samples to get the word out on their products. So I've got 3 different clear finishes here that we've been messing around with on a few projects. The first 2 that we've used already are these. Now, confusingly, this one is 3198. It's been mislabeled, and I'm telling you that because I get so confused with the numbers, and I don't want you to be confused. This one is an excellent finish, which I used on those tops over there. I'll talk more about that in a minute. This one is very similar. There's not a lot to choose between the 2 of them in terms of consistency and application. However, the very special thing about the 3198 is it is astonishingly fast drying. Now we've done, I'm trying to think if we've actually sprayed that, but we've done a bit of brush painting with both of them, and I was brush painting with that 3198 on these tops. So I did that last night, and I'm quite surprised and pleased with how well it's flattened off, because as I put it on, it is quite thick and viscous. You could really see the brush marks, and I thought, oh, maybe I should have sprayed this. But it's flattened off very well. It seems quite a decent tough coat off the first coat, and I will give it 2. And just to give you a sense of the drying time, it's very hard to understand the differences in finishes when you're not working with it. When I'd done the base of those parts, flipped them onto painter's pyramids, so they were just supported on points, and did the top and the edges, and then I bet I'm not the only person that does this, just with my fingers around the bottom edge where the drips, I knew there'd be a drip forming, I just took it off with my fingers, and very, very quickly I could feel that coating harden, and harden much more than I'd expect from a water-based finish, like to the point where you wouldn't dissolve it again. It took a lot to get it off, so that gave me a sense of quite how quick it dries, and it is stackable dry in 60 minutes. So touch dry. Well, so here's the data sheet on this one. It's just one on the left that I'm talking about. So it's dust-free in 50 minutes, touch-dry in 25 minutes, and stackable in 60 minutes. So that means you could stack painted boards together and they wouldn't stick, which I think is quite impressive. You may be wondering why we are brush painting when we're set up for spraying. It's something that I would have wondered when I heard about people spraying. I thought, well, once you start spraying, surely that's all you do. Well, there's a few reasons. One is the size of the components. So we currently would have trouble getting this into our spray area and spraying all around it. The other is because we spray so much white stuff, I'm wary of putting clear finish high value oak parts in that environment, because there is so much white dust overspray around that it seems like quite a lot of hassle to set up the spray area and the racks again. so that anything I put on them is not risking being contaminated. It also just makes sense when you're doing a small bit at a time. So last night I knew I'd only have time to do these 3 tops. It didn't seem worth priming the pump and then cleaning it out again on the airless spray system which we currently use. So those are some of the reasons why you might still brush paint. And I've always liked the idea of using only products that you can spray and brush paint, because then you have more touch-up capability afterwards and generally more flexibility. Now of course they're all water-based, so the other benefit is they're more eco-friendly and they're easier to clean up and all that sort of thing. So that was the 3198 I've been talking about. That's the very fast drying one. It does seem to be a very tough finish, and it looks good. It warms the wood a little bit, not too much. Looks fairly natural. We've gone for the 10% sheen, so that code varies depending on the sheen. I do not understand the logic, because on some of Movac's paints the last 2 digits would be the 10 or the 20 or whatever the sheen, but it's not on that product. So the other one that is similar, before I get to the one that I'm actually using on these legs, the one that is similar is this AF7210. Again, the 10% sheen. Very little to tell between them in the application and general look of it. Quite viscous. It goes on fairly thick on the brush. Reading the data sheets, so I've got that one here. The drying time is a lot slower, so that's a noticeable difference. They don't recommend stacking it for 24 hours compared to the 60 minutes on the other one. And one other difference that I've noticed just in the data they've put there is they say that it's got very good pore filling properties, so it's very good for a 2-coat finish on a porous wood like oak. I'm assuming what they're saying is it would fill the pores very well, which can be a problem with finishes. So that one we have been using on some birch plywood. We've got some drawers out here. Actually, I'm not going to show you them because they've got the customer name on, and I'm trying to be a little bit more sensitive not showing names on the videos. But these bits don't have the name on, and these have been brush painted with that finish. Very hard to really see much. You want to be sort of feeling it and everything, but this is probably the best we can do on a video. It is flattening off nicely, like all the finishes I've got so far from Movac seem to do, and it does feel like a very tough professional finish. And it's still pretty quick drying as finishes go, but you want to give it a bit longer before recoats. So onto the finish that I thought I'd try on the legs here. Now it may seem a little bit strange to be using 2 different finishes on the same table. Now this is a prototype table, so it's an experiment to see how well it works from a function point of view, but I thought, well, why don't I see how a couple of different finishes look and perform on 2 different parts of the table. Because I'm trying to get into this market and offer something special. So I heard about this brand new finish. Now there's a video about it showing it being applied on Movac's YouTube channel. You could look that up. The code for the product is this one. Brand new, so I couldn't even find a technical data sheet on Movac's website. But what interested me and led me to ask them if they could send me a sample was it has wax in it, so it's waterborne, but it's a wax effect and it's fragrant. So I thought it might just look, feel and smell a little bit special. So I thought, well, why don't I give it a try? Oh, I think my gimbal's just died. Right, so the rest of this is going to be a little bit shakier. So I thought, let's try it on the games table, and then I had second thoughts because the 25mm thick tops, which are removable, I started getting concerned that the beeswaxy finish might be a little bit slippy, and those bits are quite heavy, rounded edges. So from a practicality point of view, I went with the tough finish that I've showed you. But I thought, well, for the rest of it, the base and the legs, let's just see what results we get from this this beeswax effect finish. Now, on applying it, which I've just started to do, it is surprisingly watery, amazingly watery. I mean, even this stirring stick just has a tendency to float to the top with no resistance and almost pop out. So on brush applying it, it's very drippy. Oops, I just put a piece of crap in there. Right, I'll have to clean that out. So I won't brush it, but you can imagine it's quite drippy and watery as you put it on, and you can see it being applied on that video I mentioned on Movac's website. So have a look at that. You can also apply it by rag, and I was thinking, well, why would you? On using it with the brush, I sort of understand now, because it's so drippy with the brush, you sort of want a rag to rub it in with. So I might just try that on the next leg. I have applied it to this first one here, and like a lot of water-based clear finishes, it goes on kind of milky, but does dry clear. They say that 2 coats will be enough. I'll be interested to see the result, because the other products I've been using are so much thicker that you would think that the solid content is higher, and you'd think you'd be getting a better finish. I'm not entirely sure how they compare hardness-wise and durability-wise, which was another reason for erring on the side of caution and using the definitely tough finish on the countertops, the top surfaces. Well, I'll get back to applying this, and I'll just drop in some of the end results and show you what I think once it's dry. Well, here are all the parts that I've coated with that waxy effect stuff, and it does have a nice fragrant smell. It's hard to describe. I suppose it's not, I don't know if it's necessarily waxy. If you think of waxes you've used, it might not necessarily smell like that, but fragrant is a good word for it. It'll be interesting to see how it is once it's dried. Now, these are drying under the infrared heater. We're just under an hour since I coated these, and they're pretty bone dry now, which I would expect with this heat on them. So I think we'd be ready to recoat soon. Now, it is a very natural finish, like you can hardly tell there's a finish on it. So I think it's certainly not going to be, well, I don't imagine it's going to be all that tough. I think I was better off going for the tougher finish on the tabletop there. I'm just hoping now that it's not too much of a contrast. They're both fairly matte, but the other finish, I mean, that was one coat. This is one coat on the other finish, and it looks much more finished. And I think it's darkened a bit more. That was with the A3198. Let me just offer up a piece. Yeah, so the sort of wax effect finish is the strip there. So definitely less darkening of the wood. And the A3198, which is that 60-minute touch dry finish, was the darker panel. So I'm moving on to using more of that A3198 on this main frame of the games table now. Now, this is all a bit shakier since I lost the battery on the gimbal. I noticed on the technical information for this one that they recommend thinning it with about 10% drinking water for brush application, and that has made it noticeably less viscous, so I'm anticipating it flattening off even better, because as I said, when I'd applied it before, which was before I started filming, it did just feel quite thick, so I was worried it wouldn't flatten off too well. This really has the feeling of it that it's going to really soak into the grain now at this kind of thinness, and probably end up very smooth on this first coat. So far, definitely very impressed with this 3198 in terms of the apparent toughness of it just off one coat, the way it flattens off, and certainly the drying time. Now, I must admit, I haven't checked the normal selling price, and I'm guessing this is going to be a pretty pricey one, so I don't know if it's the one that we would use so much. I mean, you can contact Movac for that, and it may be that we use that very similar one, which seem to have a lot of the same characteristics, but without the very fast drying time. And that was the AF 7210, which did particularly say it's good for porous woods like oak. Now, just judging by how hard it is to get the lid off both those tins, they seem to be very tough finishes once they're dry, and quite a similar, again judging by the drips on the tin, the colour of the finish seems to be very much the same. So, well, I'll let you know how I get on in future videos, and you'll see this finished games table before long, because I will be making a big deal about this on social media, trying to get some interest, because it's something that I hope to put into production. It's partly CNC made, so it could be a slightly different direction for the business. This is maybe a helpful shot to show you the second coat on one of these parts. So that's been denibbed with the Deros sander, the random orbital sander at 240 grit, and then recoated with the brush. And this is about 15 minutes from when I finished, so you can see how it's starting to dry off, and you can tell that it's brush painted, but I think you can see it's flattening off fairly well. I think it is definitely going to need a bit of denibbing. I don't know if that's partly bubbles out of the pores or bits of stuff that are on there, so I will have to see what I do about that final coat, whether I might have to very fine sand it and wax polish it, which is what I do when I'm hand finishing, to get a good final finish so that you run your hand over it and it's smooth. One slight concern I've got about this finish is it's so good. I mean, this is the first coat denibbed with the 240 grit with the random orbital. I'm just a bit worried it's so good that people will think that it's a laminate. There's something about it that it seems, I suppose it is just much more of an industrial finish than what I'm used to. I don't know about you, but I see proper solid wood furniture and the finish is so perfect I almost can't relate to it compared to hand finishing. And I hand finish something, and I guess it is the slight imperfection that it looks hand finished, and I take a sort of pride in that. But we're moving now to finishes that have a level of perfection, certainly when they're sprayed they will, which I think is a good thing. I think particularly for a table that I'm trying to bring to market as more of a mass-produced thing, I think we are moving into the sort of areas where we want that sort of quality of finish. Now this is the frame that I was showing you, so that's an hour or so ago that was coated. Maybe slightly less. That's not been under the infrared. That certainly feels touch dry, and that is at the point where, almost at the point where it should be stackable according to the technical data sheet. So that'll have a second coat, and I should be able to get everything coated tonight, so I could assemble it at the start of the week, which is great because I was trying to get all this fitted in over the weekend without disrupting the rest of the work that's in the workshop. Now I'm denibbing the parts that I've coated with the wax effect finish, so that's this coat. And coming straight off the rack where they've been heated, they are bone dry under the infrared heaters. They really just feel, and to some extent just look, like wood that's been wetted and dried, so you get that slight raising of the grain, that slight roughness. When I sand it though, it does come back feeling like it's had a bit of a finish, but it is very matte, and of course it is the matte coating that I went for. However, as I said before, I think it's going to look a lot more natural than the 3198 finish, which now you can see is drying off very well, and is really surprisingly smooth from having two brush coats. I think that second coat has definitely benefited from being 10% diluted. I mean, I'm very pleased with that, I've got to say. If you look really closely, you can see it's brushed, but it's very professional looking, really. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on the second coat of this one. Now both of them, they denibbed quite easily with the 240 grit that I'm using. I just used one of these by hand on the arises and the edges, and then the same on the Deros sander. So they sand back pretty quickly with that abrasive. So yes, we'll just have to see how it looks with the second coat. This gives you an impression of just how thin this waxy stuff is. It's very, very watery, so you don't really feel like you're getting a good coat on it, and it seems much more prone to dripping, whereas the other one seems to sort of hold on the vertical surfaces. This is a lot more prone to drip and run over the edge, so you have to be quite careful to try and get the thickness just right, which is a bit tricky. I'm holding off doing the rag because I just thought I'd see what I could achieve with the brush. Here's a summary for you with the finished parts. Now here are the 3 tabletop parts all laid together, and I am very impressed with the finish that I've been able to achieve on this just from the brush. It's really quite difficult to detect that it's a brush finish. It's flattened off quite beautifully. I haven't denibbed this or put any more wax on it, and I'm inclined not to do that. So I'm very confident that once we start spraying that product, we'll get excellent results. Very quick drying, very tough, just a nice sort of professional look and feel to that product. So that was again the AFL 3198 is the correct code for that. That's for the 10% gloss variation, which I felt would be closest to the sheen level of 15% that we use for the Sayalac paint, which all of our customers seem to like. So there is just, I mean, I wouldn't personally quite call that matte. I think that's more sort of silk satin. So we can compare that to the other finish that we've been looking at, which I've been calling the waxy one, because that seems to be how it's marketed, that it's got some natural wax in it and a sort of fragrance. So that again is this code. That's the one that was surprisingly thin and watery. So we put them side by side, you'll get a pretty good idea of the finish. It's quite a similar sheen level. I mean, it is meant to be, but it is that bit more matte. I think just because it's a thinner coating, so the wood looks more natural. I'm really preferring this one, but I think if you're looking for a natural finish with that sort of natural smell, I guess that's where it's targeted, where the wood wants to look less coated, less like it's got a film of something on top. And I'm sure this would thicken up as well with more coats, but these are both 2 coats, so it's quite a good comparison. So I'm not sure if I'd use this again, to be honest. Although I'm going to keep hold of this, and I may try, because I saw in the video from Movac that you can add stains. I think you can to both of them, but I'll be interested to try them both with stains, because if you're a long-time subscriber, you'll probably know I had a hell of a time with some stain at the beginning of this year using water-based stains, and that was putting the stain on first and then the finish on top. So I'll be interested to see how these finishes work with the stain mixed in and whether you get a consistent colour. So if I have a project that comes up that requires that, I'll give these a try and I'll do a video for you. So just to recap, I've talked about those 2. This is the one that I've mentioned but not shown you a great deal of, but we have used on birch ply and got very similar results to the 3198, but the main difference seems to be the slower drying time. So I hope that's helpful. This won't have been the most perfectly edited video. I just wanted to get it out there. I'll be putting more out about the games table, and I want to make sure I leave some time for editing up those videos. So yeah, well, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.